What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we are down to just 4 teams left in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament, as Louisville, Wisconsin, Pitt, and Nebraska are all in the Final Four. And how about Nebraska upsetting number 2 seed Texas? How did they do it? And did it have something to do with last year when Texas beat Nebraska in the Elite Eight? We'll see. And how about Tampa? Yes, the new title town of all sports, as Tampa won the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II championship, as they took down Washburn quite easily. Was having home court very beneficial to them? And which team will be winning between Louisville, Pitt, Wisconsin, and Nebraska in the NCAA Division I championship? Hand me a volleyball. Set up the net, because I'm about to serve you some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. I hope you all are doing well on this beautiful Monday evening. This is episode 120, but who really is keeping count here? But all jokes aside, this is the last week of the NCAA women's volleyball season. I never thought I'd be saying that. Where's the time gone? My good golly gracious. So without any further delay, let's get on into the NCAA women's volleyball side of things. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor that I must go over is the Southern California Warriors. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get film to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players are playing with one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California and then Warriors. The second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to hire someone and you need a background check? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Kit founded and has managed Background Check International since 1994, and he's here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or any other illegal activity. They sadly do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces, as you could just type in the word background, then check, then international, then put a little dash, then put BCI, and they also have their website, www.bcint.com. So definitely do give them a follow. They do an outstanding job with what they do. And also give IE Sports Radio a follow on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and on Facebook by typing in the word IE Sports and Radio. And make sure you go to isportsradio.com, because for the last 7.5 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, or other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows to dedicating themselves to major sports cities around the country. All the while, iSports Radio has been by the fans, for the fans. And with your help, they are ready to take the next best step. When you go to iesportsradio.com, you'll see a Patreon link with 5 different tiers. The first one starting out at $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout-out from all 27 shows on IE Sports Radio. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to the Podcasting University, IESRU, and even a chance to be featured on IE Sports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you very much for helping IE Sports Radio and continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And also got to give a shout out to Turban Patriot, our fan of the month from the month of October, as he is a diehard New England Patriots fan, diehard Boston fan. He's done a great job when it comes to being a judge on 3 and Out. And more importantly, he's just an all-around down-to-earth guy. And he's also in the running for the IE Sports Radio Hall of Fame. So big shout out to Turban Patriot. Also have to give a shout out to IE Sports Radio's Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, and Marcus Los Great. So definitely, I gotta show them a lot of love. And without a doubt, thank you to those two. Now, without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. Let's start with Division II, as I'm only going to recap the final, which was Tampa versus Washburn. And Tampa completed its season, and they won the NCAA championship. Its 4th NCAA Division II championship, as they swept away Washburn. The first set was 25-21, second set was 26-24, and then the third set was 25-21. So, all in all, it wasn't really the most dramatic match, but the best chance for Washburn to extend the match past 3 sets came in set number 2, as both teams were just back and forth in that second set, as neither team led by more than 2. In fact, there were actually 20 ties and 6 lead changes. It was that crazy when it came to that second set. But Tampa, they managed to dodge a set point. They were down 24-23, and then they rattled off the next 3 points as they took the second set. This is after they took the first set 25-21. There were only 4 ties and 3 lead changes, and it was rather impressive that Tampa had a lot of determination and grit. And then the third set, they knew that the championship was within their sights. Despite some great gameplay from Washburn, Tampa was able to take that third set, 25-21, and celebrate their 4th NCAA Division II championship. The funny thing is that Tampa was the highest seed remaining of the teams, as every 1 seed in the NCAA Division II tournament all got knocked out before making it to the Elite 8, as Tampa was actually the host site of the NCAA Division II championship, or the Elite 8, Final Four, and championship altogether. So Tampa theoretically had home court advantage, kind of like how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had home field advantage when they played in the Super Bowl this past year. So Tampa Bay, I'm just going to say this, I think it's starting to turn into a title town, as you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning it last year, you had the Tampa Bay Lightning winning it the past 2 years, and now the University of Tampa, which completed a 34-2 record, won the NCAA Division II championship, which was absolutely outstanding. Tampa was led by Katie McKeel, who had 16 kills. She hit .371, which was very impressive. Ironically enough, Tampa hit .361 as a team, as they did a great job of just applying offensive pressure. Their offense was very balanced, as Taylor Fossler had 9 kills and only 1 hitting error. Khalil Kors had 8 kills, and then Sorrel Houghton had 7 kills, 0 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .350. Other stats that Tampa excelled in over Washburn included digs, as they outdug them 69-59. Blocks, as Tampa outblocked Washington 4-3, even though it wasn't all that much. And hitting percentage, as Tampa hit .361 compared to Washburn's .224. As for Washburn, they were led by Jenna Berg, who had 15 kills, while Kelsey Gordon had 12 kills, only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .285. Allison Maxwell had 8 kills, and Sydney Fitzgibbons added 7 kills. All in all, Washburn did all that it could to try to stay with Tampa, but it just wasn't enough. And I think losing that second set was kind of the turning point. And it sucks because I think they could have taken that second set, but you got to give it up to Tampa. They had the home court advantage, and it really benefited them. I know it's not really fair, but Tampa wasn't even the number one seed in the regional play, as they had to take down, I believe they took down West Florida. I'm not entirely certain. Yes, it was West Florida within their region. So for Tampa, they having home court advantage really made the difference because all these other teams coming from different regions had to travel across the country. Tampa didn't have to really move all that much. So, and then also having nearly 2,000 spectators, which most of them were fans of Tampa, really benefited them as well. So, all in all for Tampa, it was a great season for them, and they capped it off with a win on their home floor. And I think it's rather impressive that they finished 34-2, which is not bad at all. And I definitely do need to make note of the Division II championship, just because, well, not a whole lot of these, and this is no dig on anybody, but not a whole lot of these other volleyball shows or volleyball podcasts are really making note of the Division II championship. Also should note that Tampa's only losses were to Northwest Missouri State, which was a 5-set loss, and then their other loss was to Nova Southeastern, as they lost that one in 4 at Tampa. So, all in all, and they also lost in Tampa to Northwest Missouri State. But all in all for Tampa, they won when it mattered most, and they ended the season on a 21-match win streak, which was very impressive. And they didn't even have to go 5 in any match of the NCAA Division II championship. So, all in all, very impressive stuff from Tampa. Bravo, and I really couldn't be more proud of them. And Larry says, we dig deep at IESR. That's a nice little pun right there. We dig deep, because dig is actually a term in volleyball, which is basically a bump. So, all in all, yes, Larry, we do dig deep at IE Sports Radio, and I definitely do need to give a shout out to Daryl Trujillo, who helped basically get me on track when it came to NCAA Division II and Division III. So I definitely do appreciate him for keep getting me on track. And I think the Division II championship taught us one thing, that no team was safe, and there was not really a heavy favorite. Yes, there was Cal State San Bernardino, who probably was like the number 2 seed and the number 1 seed from their region, but it just meant that no matter what your seed was, anyone could have won. And like I said, not one number 1 seed from regional play made it out and into the Elite 8. So, all in all, this just goes to show you that NCAA Division II women's volleyball is just as exciting as Division I volleyball. So, to wrap up, I hope to cover more of this in the near future. It's just tough just because there's a lot of volleyball going on, and I kind of don't want to cram it all too much in the span of 90 minutes. So, there's that. So that's going to do it for the Division II side of things. Jumping over to Division I, and also I did enjoy my little match of the day, my weekly match of the day when it came to the NCAA Division II tournament. I really enjoyed picking a match of the day, and I had to dig deep when it came to certain rankings, the AVCA coaches poll after the bracket came out, all that stuff, or the most recent AVCA coaches poll that came out. So it just went to show you that, well, again, Division II women's volleyball is not to be slept on. So there's that. So jumping over to Division I, we had quite a number of big-time matches here. So we have to start off with the elephant in the room, Texas versus Nebraska. This match was held at Gregory Gym, which was basically Texas's protective dome, its place where it loved to thrive. I'm just going to also say this about Texas. They were coming off of a reverse sweep over Washington in their Sweet 16, Washington went up 2-0, and then eventually Texas wound up winning the next 3 sets and wound up advancing to the Elite Eight. Against Nebraska, however, this was a totally different story. Keep in mind that Texas beat Nebraska in the Elite Eight last year, which was quite impressive. And the first 2 sets, it totally went Nebraska's way. As the first set, Nebraska won that 25-19. The second set, it looked as if Nebraska was going to be cruising, but then Texas tried to make a comeback, but then Nebraska just slammed the door on Texas as they went up 2-0 in the match. Texas narrowly escaped in the third set, winning it 25-23, as it looked as if Nebraska was going to sweep the match, but Texas had other plans. But then the fourth set, Nebraska came alive. They had players such as Lindsey Krause, Allie Battenhorst, and Maddie Kubik stepping up. Also got to give a shout to Nicklin Hames, who she said they out-schemed and out-hearted Texas in an interview. And she could not have been more right, because Nebraska, they finished second in the Big Ten, and obviously it was tough for them because I think they could have probably won the Big Ten, but unfortunately fell short against Wisconsin. As we say hello to Brad Buckingham in the chat room, he says, "What up, T-Rod?" Hey, buddy. And unfortunately, I gotta say, it was a tough loss for Washington before I continue on with Nebraska and Texas, as Washington did lose to Texas in the Sweet 16, but they have a lot to be proud of. They won the Pac-12. They had Texas on their heels. And honestly, I think Washington kind of cracked the code of possibly beating Texas at Texas. Like, I would have loved to have seen Washington and Nebraska in the Elite Eight. Just because Texas was a big favorite to win it all. Like, Texas returned a majority of its players, and the fact that Washington almost won was amazing, but unfortunately they just fell a little short. Back to Nebraska and Texas, I totally agree with what Nicklin Hames said. That Nebraska out-hearted and out-schemed Texas, and I don't know if any of this had... I don't know if the last year's Elite Eight, or not last year's, last season's Elite Eight kind of played a factor, but for those that forgot, Nebraska lost to Texas, and after the game, Texas decided to tweet something kind of motivating. It was a tweet at now this tweet wasn't really disrespectful, but it was a dig at Nebraska, and it was a dig to one of their players. The tweet said, "Today's weather, all sky and no sun." That was clearly referring to Skylar Fields of Texas and Lexi Sun of Nebraska. And keep in mind, for those that don't know, Lexi Sun actually used to play at Texas, and then she transferred to Nebraska. So basically, the Texas women's volleyball Twitter account was basically making a dig at Lexi Sun in Nebraska. And Lexi didn't really have her best game, but I don't think it was disrespectful, and I don't know if that really motivated Nebraska in any way, and I don't know if last year's Elite Eight motivated them, but honestly, I gotta give it up to Nebraska. I didn't think they'd make it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. I don't think anybody had them making it to the Elite Eight or Final Four, because honestly, I had Nebraska losing in the Sweet 16 to Kentucky. That wound up blowing up in my face, because Kentucky lost in the round of 32, the reigning champion Kentucky, and then Nebraska just tore past Illinois, and then Nebraska was able to finish off Texas in the Elite Eight. So Nebraska will get the honor of facing Pitt, which managed to defeat Purdue, and let's actually recap that matchup. But before we recap Pitt and Purdue, I gotta recap Purdue and BYU in the Sweet 16, just because Purdue and BYU was a great matchup. The match actually went 5. The first set, Purdue just stomped all over BYU. They held BYU to a negative 179 hitting percentage while hitting 379 in return. Then BYU managed to take the second and third set by hitting 303 in set 2 and 406 in set 3, while holding Purdue to only 171 and 172 in sets 2 and 3. Then in set 4, Purdue got an early jump and never looked back as Purdue won that fourth set 25-13, and they hit 389 in that set while holding BYU to only 81. Now for set 5. Now, set 5 was rather interesting. BYU led throughout most of the set. They went off to an early 4-1 advantage, and then eventually Purdue tied it at 7-7. BYU eventually went up 9-7, and then eventually went up 11-7. I want to say it was 11-7. And eventually BYU had match point at 14-10. And I'm thinking, all right, BYU's got this. Because I actually picked BYU to upset Purdue in the Sweet 16. So before we continue, Brad says, yeah, man, I'm sad that Washington's out of it. But the ladies did a phenomenal job in the tourney. Facts right there. And Brad says, other than Washington football, it's been a good fall for the Dogs. I totally agree. So back to BYU Purdue. So BYU has match point, and they're serving 14-10. Purdue eventually gets a kill from Caitlin Newton. It's now 14-11 BYU. So up to serve is Jenna Otek, and she is the pressure is on her. If she misses the serve, it's over. If she gets an ace, or if she gets BYU out of system and Purdue scores, they're still in it. Jenna Otek gets an ace. It's 14-12, and I think at that point BYU called timeout. So 14-12 BYU leads. Then the next serve, it's another ace. BYU now leads only 14-13. Then the next serve, it's another tough serve from Jenna Otek, and eventually it results in a BYU hitting error. It's now 14-14. And at that point, I'm just thinking, what in the world? What just happened? Because BYU had 4 match points, and they let Purdue back into the match. They let Purdue back into set 5. BYU gets a kill the next point as Kenzie Kerber is just flat out phenomenal. It's match point for BYU, the 5th match point. BYU doesn't take advantage of it. Purdue gets the next point. And then it was basically Purdue gets the next point. And then for BYU, they kept going to Kenzie Kerber. And Kenzie Kerber was the only one that was able to put down kills for BYU. And other than that, no one was able to put down a kill late in the set for BYU, which is very disappointing. And eventually Purdue won it. It was 17-16, and Purdue won it off of a block, as Purdue won it 18-16. They dodged 5 match points and dug themselves out of a 14-10 hole to defeat BYU. So Brad asks, is Louisville going to win the ship? I'll get to that in a little bit, but I don't understand. How does BYU blow that? You have 5 match points. You're up 14-10. It's so mind-blowing. I don't want to hear anybody saying, oh, it was BYU's schedule. No. BYU returned most of their team from last year, and they had a bunch of transfers, which included Kenzie Kerber, who transferred from Utah. I don't want to hear the excuses from BYU. I will say this about Purdue, though. Purdue has a lot of darn determination, and Jenna Otek is probably my MVP. And yes, Larry, 5 match points. BYU had 5 match points, but they just couldn't convert. And it's a lot of credit to Purdue because, yes, Purdue plays a tough schedule in the Big Ten, but BYU's schedule isn't that easy when it comes to the West Coast Conference. You got San Diego, Pepperdine, LMU, sometimes Santa Clara. I just don't get it. And BYU only came in with 1 loss, and that was to Pitt. But I guess strength of schedule and turning points were the key to the turnaround. I just have a lot of trouble processing how BYU just wasn't able to close the deal. As I gotta give a lot of credit to Purdue. Jenna Otek really sparked the comeback with her great serving. Caitlin Newton was phenomenal as well. Caitlin Newton led Purdue in kills with 20. Even though she had 12 hitting errors, She got other contributions, such as Grace Cleveland, who had 14 kills, and she hit .379. Raven Colvin, the freshman middle blocker, I think she is. It's either her or Jael Johnson. Regardless, Raven Colvin added 11 kills. She hit .444, and Jael Johnson chipped in 10 kills, and she didn't even have a hitting error. So Purdue, as a team, hit .275 while holding BYU to .151. As for BYU, they were led by Kenzie Kerber, who had 16 kills, while Talon Ballard-Nixon had 10 kills. But that was it when it came to double-digit kill leaders. Their next kill leader after Ballard-Nixon was Aaron Livingston, who had 9 kills. And then Heather Knitting and Kennedy Eschenberg both chipped in 7 kills. All in all, I just can't believe BYU just could not close that deal. That was their match to lose, in my opinion. Like, I give Purdue a lot of credit, but how do you blow that, man? I'm sorry. Like, I just have a tough time I'm just having a tough time just processing this and just saying, why couldn't BYU just close the deal? All they needed to do was go to Kerber. And that was the problem. Kenzie Kerber was the only clutch player late in that fifth set for BYU. Everyone else basically couldn't hit it to save their lives, and it's disappointing. And then why did the serve receive for BYU just suddenly turn off when it was 14-11? Like, what in the heck, man? As for the Elite Eight matchup between Purdue and Pitt, that went to Pitt as they wound up winning in 4 sets and punching their first ever ticket to the Final Four, as Pitt won the first set 25-20. The second set was actually back and forth as both teams basically traded leads, and there were actually 9 lead changes and 18 ties as Purdue took the second set 30-28. In the third set, Pitt led the entire set and never trailed as they wound up winning 25-20. And then set 4, Purdue hardly led, and Pitt just won that fourth set 25-15. And they advanced to their first ever Final Four, which was great stuff. Because Pitt last year, they came oh so close to making it to the Final Four, but then they got reverse swept by, ironically enough for Brad, Washington. So Pitt was led by Lecator member Monet, who had 21 kills, and she hit .385, which was very impressive. As a whole, Pitt hit .311, as they also got contributions from Serena Gray, who had 14 kills and 0 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .583. Rachel Fairbanks, the freshman hitter, had 10 kills and only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .471. The scary thing about Pitt was that their star player, Kayla Lund, didn't even have the greatest game. She only had 5 kills, 8 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of -115. And yet Pitt was able to win that. So it just goes to show you that Pitt has a lot of depth on their team. As, like I said, Lecator member Monet was strong. Serena Gray has come into her own. Also have to give credit to Chinaza Endi, who had 7 kills. Chiamaka Nwakolo added 8 kills as well. So all in all for Pitt, I think they really have come into their own. Also have to give credit to Ashley Browski, who had 19 digs. As a team, Pitt had 60 digs compared to Purdue's 53. And like I said, Purdue only hit 156, and that's partially because Pitt had 9 blocks, but it's also partially because Purdue only had the 2-headed monster. Well, actually, no. They had a mini 3-headed monster. They had Caitlin Newton leading the way with 16 kills. She did have 10 hitting errors, which was my only negative stat for her. Raven Colvin added 10 kills, and Grace Cleveland added 9 kills. And then also they got contributions from Jael Johnson and Emma Ellis, who had 8 and 6 kills respectively. But this matchup went to Pitt, as Pitt really has shown their strides, and they really represent the ACC well. So a couple more matches to go over, then we'll jump to a commercial break, is Minnesota versus Baylor. So this was back in the Sweet 16, and Baylor was the 5 seed, and Minnesota was the 12 seed. And for those that forgot, I had Minnesota losing in the round of 32. Silly me. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because Minnesota stomped on Stanford. And then in this match against Baylor, I was very surprised. So, the first set, Baylor won that one by the skin of their teeth, 28-26. The second set, Minnesota never trailed, but while it was a close set, Minnesota won that 25-22. Baylor won the third set 25-20 as they never trailed. And then in set 4, this was the big set right here. This was, in my opinion, the turning point. Minnesota was trailing a good portion of set number 4, and then Minnesota came back after the midway point of set 4, and they eventually took it 25-23. And I was thinking, come on, Minnesota, you got to push it to 5, because I had Minnesota and Baylor going 5 sets, because when it came to my daily 3-set tweet, one of the sets, or my daily 5-set tweets, one of the sets that I had was most likely going 5, and I said Minnesota Baylor. Sure enough, Minnesota heeded my wish and forced a 5th set. And the 5th set, it was back and forth early on, but then Minnesota I think it was past the 5-point mark. Minnesota was able to just tear past Baylor and win that 5th set 15-10. And I was wrong about Minnesota. I thought Minnesota was going to underachieve in this tournament and not go farther than the Sweet 16. But Minnesota really turned it around, and I was very impressed with how Hugh McCutcheon outcoached Baylor in that game. So, good stuff for Minnesota. Minnesota was led by Ari Mayabi, who had 18 kills. She hit .324. Stephanie Samity had a big game, even though her hitting percentage and the number of errors kind of say otherwise, as Samity had 16 kills. Jenna Wenas had 13 kills. As a team, Minnesota only hit 166, which was kind of surprising, and they also got outdug 75-73, which wasn't terrible. The big stat, in my opinion, was the blocks, as Minnesota had a whopping 13.5 blocks to Baylor's 10. And then the serve-receive battle was also won by Minnesota, as Minnesota had 6 aces, and they only missed 4 serves, which was kind of key, compared to Baylor having only 5 aces and 12 missed serves. As for Baylor, they were led by Yassiana Presley, as she ends her Baylor career with 22 kills. She did have 10 hitting errors, which was also a red flag. Avery Skinner added 19 kills, and Lauren Harrison added 13 kills. Both players had 8 hitting errors, however. And then their kill leader after Harrison was Marquis Vandermark, who had 7 kills. All in all, for Minnesota, I was very impressed. They only had 2 hitting errors in set number 5, and they hit .318, which was very key. So I think for Minnesota, they had all the momentum after winning that 4th set, and they continue to have that momentum late in the 5th set. I mean, the 5th set was close early on, but then Minnesota started to find their groove, and then they just pulled away. So you can't knock the hustle from Minnesota. Their Elite 8 matchup was a whole different story, as Wisconsin swept Minnesota 25-18, 26-24, and 25-22. The second set was the best chance for Minnesota to extend the match. But unfortunately for them, Wisconsin just found a way to dig their way out of 2 set points. Wisconsin trailed 24-22 and then scored the last 4 points. And I'm like, oh no, that was Minnesota's best chance at winning that set. Or I think it was vice versa. I think Wisconsin had 2 set points. Yeah, Wisconsin had 2 set points. My apologies. Wisconsin had 2 set points, and then Minnesota tied the setup at 24-24, and then Wisconsin finally got their you-know-what together. It was all courtesy of Dana Retke closing out that set. Speaking of Dana Retke, she led Wisconsin with 15 kills, only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .520. Devin Robinson also added 11 kills for the Badgers. Grace Loberg chipped in 8 kills, and Jade Demps also added 7 kills of her own. In terms of the serve-receive battle, Minnesota was kind of dominated in the ace department, as they only had 3 aces compared to Wisconsin's 7. In terms of digs, Wisconsin outdug Minnesota 54-48. Wisconsin outblocked Minnesota 10-6. And in terms of hitting percentage, Wisconsin outhit Minnesota 258-193, as Mayabe led Minnesota with 13 kills. She hit 296, which was rather impressive. Samity also chipped in 12 kills. She only had 3 hitting errors, but she took 42 swings. And all in all, for Minnesota, that was pretty much it. Jenna Winas also added 8 kills. But it was just Wisconsin just dominating for the most part. I thought Wisconsin was going to win that one. They won the first 2 meetings against Minnesota, albeit the second meeting, it was rather bumpy, but Wisconsin was able to seal the deal. So there was that right there for whatchamacallit, for the Wisconsin-Minnesota match. I'm not going to recap Louisville's wins. Okay, I will say this. Prayers and thoughts go out to everyone affected by the tornadoes in Kentucky. I hope everyone is safe, and I hope everyone is situated, and I hope everyone it gets back on their feet. But for Louisville, their Sweet 16 matchup was a stomping of Florida. Like, Louisville was nowhere near close of being in danger of losing to Florida. And then their Elite 8 matchup against Georgia Tech, I gotta give Georgia Tech credit. They really battled back after trailing most of the second set, but after that second set, it was pretty much all Louisville, as Louisville just dominated, as Louisville will be making their first ever Final Four appearance in women's volleyball. And also, to answer Brad's question, is Louisville going to win it all? Well, Louisville is undefeated. That's the scary thing about Louisville. They're still undefeated at this point of the season. And here's my thing for Louisville, however. I think they can win it all, but they face a very tough Wisconsin team. That's going to be my thing. Can those players on Louisville stack up to the height and talent that Wisconsin has? It's going to be very, very interesting. Like, I think Wisconsin kind of has the edge in height, but Louisville just has that overall edge in momentum, in just all-around coaching. I'm not trying to say Kelly Sheffield is a bad coach, but I think Louisville is just they're having that athletic factor. And Tori Dilfer's done a great job when it comes to setting up the offense. And all in all, they're going to need to have big games from Anna Stevenson, Anna DeBeer. The list goes on. And I think it's going to be a fun little matchup right there. So Wisconsin-Louisville, that's going to be a great matchup. And the other matchup will be Pitt versus Nebraska. In case you're putting 2 plus 2 together, it's going to be ACC versus the Big Ten in the Final Four, as Louisville representing the ACC takes on Wisconsin representing the Big Ten, while Pitt representing the ACC takes on Nebraska representing the Big Ten. So those are your Final Four right there, and Brad says T's and P's. And all in all, I'm really looking forward to this. Why? Because those matchups will be nationally televised. But before I go to a commercial break, I do need to go on this little rant. I need to know, why the heck was none of the Elite 8 matches nationally televised? Every matchup on Saturday was on ESPNU. Now, for people that have ESPNU or ESPN News, you could skip over this. For those that feel my pain that did not have ESPNU or ESPN News or any of that stuff, I need to get this off my chest. What on ESPN or ESPN2 was so important than not putting on national television NCAA Women's Volleyball Elite 8? I butchered that, but you get what I mean. What on ESPN and ESPN2 was so important to not put NCAA Women's Volleyball Elite 8 action on. It makes zero sense. Like, did everyone forget that the U.S. won gold medal in indoor volleyball, beach volleyball, and even sitting volleyball? And NCAA Women's Volleyball still did not get the national television recognition that it got like it did last season. Last season, ESPN nationally televised the Elite 8 and some of the Sweet 16 matchups. But instead, they didn't even televise not one Sweet 16 matchup and not one Elite 8 matchup. I was not happy. I think Nebraska fans were also not happy. I saw a couple of them saying, I unfortunately have to watch via your tweets. And I basically had to watch via the tweets and via the NCAA Women's Volleyball live stats feed. It was not fun. I really want to watch the game instead of just looking on Twitter for blow-by-blow updates. It really hurt me. And it's like, why are we still doing this? You were able to nationally televise Elite 8 action and Sweet 16 action last season in the spring, but you couldn't do it that last Saturday. There wasn't even college football on. And before everyone says, what about Army-Navy? That was on ESPN. Or, I'm sorry, not ESPN, CBS. There were no games on ESPN or ESPN2 when it came to college football. They could have at least put one. I wouldn't have minded if it was Louisville, Georgia Tech. But instead, we get this whole little ESPN spiel of not putting NCAA women's volleyball matches on national television. I can't believe we're still doing this. And yes, Brad, the disrespect for the ladies. No, I'm sorry. I don't see what else was more important. Maybe college basketball, but still, college basketball gets all the recognition on ESPN. Like, they get all their matches 95% of the time nationally televised during the NCAA tournament. What does women's volleyball get? Only 3 nationally televised matches within their tournament. And that's the Final Four and the championship. And the championship's going to be on ESPN too, which is, I guess, cool, but still. I don't know what to say. I don't know what else to say when it comes to ESPN. It's like, they're just probably going to bypass this and just talk about LeBron or Patrick Mahomes or whatnot, instead of just doing something to help grow the sport of volleyball and make it so that it can grow and have more viewership and have boosted ratings. I get volleyball isn't as big as basketball or football or baseball, but come on. You could at least give some recognition to a sport that the U.S. won 3 gold medals in different formats, that is. Woo! So that's my little rant right there. So I know most people could probably disagree with me, but I just need to get that off my chest. I really did need to get that off my chest because not everyone has ESPNU or ESPN News because not everyone here makes money. You know what I mean? So I just need to get that off my chest right there. If anyone disagrees, you could just, you know where to find me on the Set Point Twitter account, @set_point. That's where you could basically just shout at me and say, oh, you're wrong, you don't know this about volleyball. We do not care, as Mike Tomlin once said. But anyway, that's basically my rant right there. We're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial breaky break. When we come back, I will be previewing the Final Four between Louisville and Wisconsin, and also Pitt and Nebraska. You're listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
From the shores of the Puget Sound to the rushing waters of the Columbia River, stretching across the Great Cascades, and on IE Sports Radio lives the Northwest Territory Sports Show. hosted by me, Brad Buckingham. On this show, I cover all the great collegiate and professional sport teams that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. Of course, I'm talking about the Seattle Seahawks, Seattle Mariners, Sounders, and even the Seattle Kraken. But I can't forget all of that is good in Oregon either. I got the Trailblazers, the Oregon Ducks, the Beavers, even the Timbers, and much, much more. You can listen to the show every Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, noon to 1 p.m. Pacific on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' the NorCal Sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' the NorCal Sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA to the grand slams of the MLB to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Teran Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Make sure you check out all of those amazing shows on several different streaming platforms such as Spreaker, Spotify, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, which is where this show is on. Also check them out on Apple Podcasts, JioSaavn, and Google Podcasts. So now without any further delay, let's get on into the second half portion of this show, as basically I'll just be previewing the Final Four, and then I'll send you all on your way. Because this is the last week of the NCAA women's volleyball season, so let us see who our Final Four combatants are. And yes, I felt the need to do that. So we'll start off with the first matchup, just because we want to go in chronological order, which is Wisconsin versus Louisville. So for Louisville, they are obviously the number 1 seed, and they are looking for their first ever NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship. Louisville has had a phenomenal season as they are led by Anna Is that right? Anna DeBeer is who their kill leader is, as she has 323 kills. Also got to give it up for Aiko Jones, who has 236. Claire Chowsey, who has 281 kills. Anna Stevenson has 298 in terms of kills. And Amaya Tillman, who has 205 kills. Also got to watch out for the block, as the one who leads that category is none other than Anna Stevenson. Also got not Anna Stevenson. She's a close second to that, as Amaya Tillman is first in terms of overall blocks. Then Aiko Jones is right behind her. So all in all for Louisville, those are your kill and block leaders. In terms of their dig leaders, they are led by Elena Scott, who has 402 kills. And then DeBeer has 247 digs. So those are your dig leaders right there. And then the third dig leader is Aiden Bartlett, who has 157 digs. As a team, Louisville is hitting 300 while holding their opponents to only 137. So That's basically Louisville in a nutshell. Like I said, they're a perfect 32-0. They went 18-0 in conference play, and they are 2 wins away from achieving perfection. That has only been achieved, I think, 6 times within a NCAA women's volleyball program, where a team goes undefeated and wins the NCAA championship. It might be more, but I might be wrong. But I think it's 6, if not 8. Regardless, jumping over to Wisconsin. Wisconsin, on the other hand, is led by Dana Retke, who needs no introduction. She has 384 kills, while Julia Orzel has 295 kills, while Grace Loberg has 282 kills, and Devin Robinson has 274 kills. One thing to make note of is that Danielle Hart is out for the season, as she only had 44 kills. She tore her ACL. I want to say it was in practice, and it was just so disheartening, just because I think Hart is a senior, and if not a redshirt senior, and she unfortunately has her season cut short. And this was probably going to be her year, probably her last year, because for those that forgot, that a lot of these athletes got at a 5th year because of COVID, so there was that. And then as for the blocks, no surprise here, Dana Retke leads the team in that category with 151 blocks, while Robinson has 109 blocks. Devin Robinson has been quite the great story, as I think she's a sophomore, and she has just been phenomenal. She's taken a lot of pressure off of Retke, and she can also play the right side as well. So, leading the team in digs for Wisconsin is Lauren Barnes, who has 481 digs. Sydney Hilly has 294 digs. And then one player who I personally like when it comes to digging the ball is Georgia Savita, who has 153 digs. Now, the unique thing about Savita is that she's actually playing on a torn ACL. I don't know how she's doing it, but boy howdy, you have my respect, Savita. You definitely have my respect on how you continue to play the game. She doesn't look like she's going to be playing professionally, but honestly, the fact that she's playing hurt is really phenomenal, and I salute you. I don't think anybody could have done what she did with a torn ACL. I think she might have 2 torn ACLs. I'm not sure. All in all, I still like her moxie and whatnot. Also have to give a little bit of a shout out to Anna Smrek. While she only has 104 kills, she does have 48 blocks, and she also is 6'9", and she makes it tough for opposing players to get over the net. And that is basically a great little safety net for Wisconsin to have defensively. Like, this team as a whole, they have 286 blocks as a team, which surprisingly enough is second when it comes, I think it's second when it comes to the remaining teams' statistics. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the statistics for Pitt, so I cannot really speculate them too much, but I'll figure it out. Regardless, Wisconsin as a team is hitting 296 while holding their opponents to only 159. But against the Louisville team, it's going to be a tall task to defeat those talented players like Anna Stevenson, Anna DeBeer, Aiko Jones. The list goes on and on. So I think for Wisconsin, the defense is going to be what wins it for Wisconsin. Like, obviously the offense can score whenever it wants because of its height and Dana Retke just being a human mallet. But for the defense, it really has to show up. Last year, it didn't necessarily come into its own when they played Texas. I think for the whole match, I think Texas was just made Wisconsin feel so uncomfortable. But now Wisconsin is basically on the other side of that 1 versus 4 matchup. So I think 1 versus 4 is kind of interesting just because sometimes the past 2 tournaments, we've had the 4 seed coming out on top, as Wisconsin back in 2019 was basically the 4 seed, and it took down Baylor, the 1 seed. And then last spring, Wisconsin was the 1 seed, and Texas was the 4 seed, and Texas swept Wisconsin, which actually turned out to be the only loss of Wisconsin. So this is basically it for Wisconsin. Most of those players from last year are now super seniors or redshirt seniors as they took the 5th year of eligibility. Because after this, that's basically it. They're going to be going professionally. They're going to be playing professionally or just doing other things in life. So Wisconsin basically is playing for not only its state, but they're playing for their senior class, and they're playing for the players that also graduated from last year. I think they had like 1 or 2 players that decided not to come back. But for Wisconsin, they have a lot of seniors on their team. Louisville, on the other hand, they're trying to make history and finish the season undefeated and with their first ever championship. So we shall see if Louisville can do so against this very tough Wisconsin team. And Wisconsin, if you look at their wins, you would think that this team isn't really the greatest team, because in one of their first loss of the season was to Maryland, and Maryland didn't even come close to making the tournament. Like, Maryland was off to a great start, but the fact that Wisconsin lost to Maryland was very shocking. And then 2 of their losses came against Purdue, which we all know how good Purdue is. So the fact that Wisconsin needed the last week of the season to win the Big Ten just goes to show you how deep the Big Ten was this season. And it wasn't just Wisconsin and Nebraska. It was other teams like Minnesota, Purdue, Ohio State, Penn State, even Michigan was up there. So for Wisconsin, I think being battle-tested in the Big Ten really helps them. And then as for Louisville, they also got some challenges in the ACC. They had to take on Pitt. They had to take on Georgia Tech 3 times, including the tournament. And then they also had to take on a feisty Notre Dame team, an improved Miami team. So I think we can all say that Wisconsin and Louisville deserve to be here. This is the battle of 2 teams that finished atop their respective conference. As for the other matchup, and I'm not going to make predictions, by the way. I am very bad at predicting, and I already made my predictions via my bracket. So, as for Nebraska and Pitt, so for Nebraska, they have kind of had their ups and downs. You obviously have to remember that they had their first loss of the season to Utah, which eventually turned into a loss at Stanford, which eventually turned into a loss to Louisville, via sweep, mind you. And then also Nebraska was looking good when it came to Big Ten play until they ran to those 2 tough matches against Wisconsin and Minnesota, both of which resulting in losses. Wisconsin beating Nebraska in Lincoln in 3 sets, and then Minnesota beating Nebraska on the road in 5 sets. And then Ohio State. This was probably the shocker that was all shockers. Ohio State swept Nebraska. I did not think Ohio State was going to do that. If you had told me, I mean, it's tough to win at Columbus, but against Nebraska? Come on. I thought Nebraska was probably better than that. I think that might have been the turning point right there. Just because it's tough when you're on the road, it's tough to compete. And they pretty much, other than that losing 1 set to Indiana, they pretty much convincingly won their matches for the most part. They did lose to Wisconsin in the last week of the Big Ten play, or the last week of the regular season. But they did follow that up with a great win over Purdue, on the road, mind you. And for the most part, when it comes to this NCAA tournament, Nebraska has only lost 1 set. That's another thing I got to make note of. Louisville and Nebraska have only lost 1 set when it comes to this whole tournament. Wisconsin, on the other hand, I forgot to mention, Wisconsin has not lost a set this whole tournament. Now, I'm not trying to jinx anybody, but I think what Wisconsin done is rather impressive. So for Nebraska, they have had a lot of ups and downs in terms of their roster. They've had a lot of young players take over. As Maddie Kubik leads their team in kills with 380. She's not really the youngest player, but you know what I mean. Kayla Caffey is third in kills with 230. Lindsay Krause has 246. And like I said, most of the players are rather young. Kenzie Knuckles has 229 digs. Nicklin Hames is the setter, and she's done an outstanding job. She has 1,125 assists, while she has 352 digs. That is good for second on the team. Lexi Rodriguez is first on the team in digs with 498. That is rather impressive. I believe she was named the Freshman of the Year when it came to the Big Ten Conference. Not entirely sure, but she is one of the bright spots for Nebraska. And then also something to note is that Lawrence Divrins is playing. She hasn't played a whole lot, but she's still getting those minutes. And, well, I think she's getting those minutes. I'd have to double check. And then also, John Cook is a smart man. He's had to go with younger players as opposed to players like Lexi Sun, who are seniors. And while that is debatable, it's actually paying dividends for his team, because it's going to help them in the future, and it's going to help pave the way for the younger players. So for Nebraska, those young players who eventually got their early reps have now grown into their own, and they have basically stepped up for Nebraska. And more importantly, I think this Nebraska team, Nebraska is the only team remaining with NCAA women's volleyball championships. Every other team has not won a championship. And Mike Pat made a joke on this, so we should be rooting for everyone but Nebraska. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I got to give respect to John Cook and Nebraska. I didn't think Nebraska would go this far, but they've really... Everyone's saying that this could be their most liked Nebraska team. This could be the most liked Nebraska team out there. And all in all, I will say that while I would be a fan of a team winning their first ever NCAA women's volleyball championship, I wouldn't mind seeing Nebraska get back on track when it comes to winning another NCAA women's volleyball championship. Just because Nebraska has to keep up with its other counterparts, such as Penn State and Stanford. Nebraska has won 5 NCAA women's volleyball championships, so we'll see if Nebraska can do the same. As Brad says, Brad is impressed with how Wisconsin has not lost a set in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament. But he says that could end, though. Yeah, it could, possibly, because Louisville is just that good, man. So that's the beauty of this NCAA tournament. Anything can happen, and especially now that we're in the later stages of the tournament, sweeps would be rather shocking to see. So, as for Pitt, I also need to make note that Nebraska finished second in the Big Ten Conference. I think I already made note of that, but Nebraska impressively finished second in the Big Ten Conference. Not easy, considering they had a lot of stiff competition. They had Ohio State on their tail, Purdue on their tail, Penn State they handled rather easily, but they didn't have too many bad losses. And against Purdue, I was rather impressed that they were able to take them down both times, just because Purdue has such a talented team. It's just that they fell short to Wisconsin, which kind of nipped them in the butt. And then also they lost at home to Wisconsin as well. So all in all, for Nebraska, they were 15-3 at home, which no longer matters. But I will say this about Nebraska: I think this team still has potential in it. I think this team could, hence the word could, topple its opponent. As for Pitt, however, Pitt has a lot of great options offensively. They have Lecator member Monet, which had a great Elite Eight matchup against Purdue. Also have Serena Gray, who transferred from crosstown rival Penn State, which is quite funny. Rachel Fairbanks has stepped up as a freshman, which is awesome. And then you also have Chinaza Endi and Chiamako Nuakolo. And then Kayla Lund, while she did have probably her worst game of the tournament, I could see her bouncing back. Like, Kayla Lund, this means a whole lot for Kayla Lund, and she, along with most of the seniors, were very devastated to see the Pitt's tournament run end in the Elite Eight via a reverse sweep to Washington. But I could also see, for Kayla Lund, I know she's going to have a big game against Nebraska. I'm not trying to say that Pitt will beat Nebraska. I'm just saying that I can see Kayla Lund bouncing back. And for Pitt, this just goes to show you that they are very deep offensively and defensively. Ashley Browski has done a great job of filling the libero position. And Valeria Vasquez Gomez, that's someone I need to make note of. While she doesn't get the swings, she does do a great job in rotations. So need to make note of that as well. And then Pitt runs a 6-2 offense with Fairbanks and Lexis Akio, who is celebrating her birthday today. So I think that 6-2 offense is running really great. For those of you wondering what a 6-2 offense is, it's basically two setters. It's kind of like the New Orleans Saints with Taysom Hill and Drew Brees from last year. Well, in terms of this year, Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, for those that are technical in terms of the NFL. But I digress. So, as for Pitt, this would be very special for them if they were to get past Nebraska. It's not going to be easy, though. I think Nebraska is peaking at the right time. I think Nebraska is playing its best volleyball, and I think that loss to Ohio State kind of woke them up, because Nebraska has had a bunch of those losses which have made everybody wonder, what the heck, why did Nebraska lose to this team? But now that Nebraska is the lowest seed in the tournament, they are the 10th seed, taking on the 3-seed Pitt, I think it's going to add a lot more fuel to the fire, just because I don't think I don't think Nebraska got the love and respect that it rightfully deserved. I think everyone doubted them, and I am not excluded. I did not think Nebraska was going to do great when it came to this tournament. I had them losing in the Sweet 16. I admit I was wrong. This Nebraska team is straight up phenomenal, and they are on the quest for number 6. And if they do get number 6, I guarantee you we will be seeing a bunch of Thanos memes. I really want to see a Thanos meme when it comes to John Cook and whatnot. So, and then also John Cook is a very special coach. I like him. I like his coaching style. And I also liked how he was able to outcoach Texas and whatnot. So, I think for me, it's going to come down to limiting the errors and getting every player situated. And I'll also say this about Pitt. Pitt is going to be making its first ever NCAA women's volleyball Final Four appearance, and that could give Nebraska the edge. I'm not entirely certain, but you also have to make note of Pitt's tough ACC schedule. They had to play Louisville twice, lost both those matchups, but both of them weren't sweeps. And then they lost to Georgia Tech, which they tied for second in the ACC, which obviously was rough, but, you know, it could have been a whole lot worse. And then Pitt also played a pretty tough schedule. They played teams like Baylor, Tennessee, BYU. It would have been even better if they played Penn State in a non-league game or non-conference game, but they got to see Penn State in the NCAA tournament. So, all in all for Pitt is kind of a great story just because Pitt almost made it to the Final Four, but they just fell short to Washington. Matter of fact, Pitt had match point last season against Washington, but Washington just surged ahead. So, all in all for Pitt, they have to serve and pass well. Kayla Lund has to come up big. If Pitt can go as far as most of their hitters can go. Like, if their hitters are on point, or at least like one or two, maybe three of them are on point, then they'll be in the NCAA championship. But if Kayla Lund's not having a good night, or Lekator member Benet's not having a good night, or they're just at the mercy of Nebraska's block, then it could be a little bit of a rough ride. But for Nebraska, back to Nebraska, I think Nebraska is playing with house money. Lowest seed of the tournament, I wouldn't say they're labeled as the bad guy, but they're trying to break other teams' history. I'm not trying to mince words here. I'm not trying to say Nebraska is the team that nobody should root for. I'm just saying that they're the only team that has won an NCAA championship, and they're trying to catch up with the likes of Penn State or Stanford. So, to that end, I think it's also going to come down to coaching as well for Pitt and for Nebraska, as Dan Fisher of Pitt and John Cook are both amazing coaches, but one has to coach a phenomenal game. One has to be playing chess, while the other has to be playing backgammon. So we'll see what happens when it comes to both those matchups. And then back to Louisville and Wisconsin. I think for Louisville, it's just going to have to be, they're going to have to figure out how to crack Wisconsin's defense. Just because Wisconsin has one of the most impressive defenses, not just in terms of blocking, but in terms of digging the ball as well. So for Louisville, their offense has to be clicking. For Wisconsin, their defense has to be on point. Like their back row players have to be digging the ball at all costs, and then the front row, when it comes to their, has to have great blocking. And Dana Redkey, it can't be the Dana Redkey show. It's got to be everybody else just pulling their own weight and helping Dana Redkey get Wisconsin the win. So that is going to be that for my little preview of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Final Four. I hope I previewed that as best as I can. And that is going to do it as a whole for Set Point. It wasn't as long as last week, but I think this is a good place to stop right here. Without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, by the way, I do need to make note of this. I will be broadcasting the NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship game on Saturday via USRN or our sister stations on USRN, Wellington Sports Radio, or USRN2. Regardless, that's going to do it tonight for Set Point. Without any further delay, let us drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you very much for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. This is the last week of the NCAA Women's Volleyball season, as I mentioned before. I can't believe it's here. I can't believe the season has flown by just like that. Pretty soon, it's going to be men's volleyball season. So, as for the schedule for next week when it comes to Set Point, next week is basically going to be a recap of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I tournament. It's going to be a recap of the Final Four and the NCAA Championship. And then the following week, December 27th, that's basically going to be a recap of everything in terms of volleyball for the calendar year of 2021. So thank you to the chat room, Larry B. and Brad Buckingham, for tuning in. Thank you all listeners for tuning in, whether you were listening live or on the playback or at work or in the wee hours of the morning. I definitely do appreciate you all tuning in, and I can't wait for the Final Four. I can't wait for the results. I will definitely be live tweeting via the Set Point Twitter account. And although the Chargers do play the Chiefs on Thursday, I'll be keeping an eye on the Final Four. But that is going to do it for Set Point. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the volleyball action on Thursday and Saturday. And I will see you on the other side. Don't know what I'm going to be doing for SoCal Supreme Sports Show, but we'll figure out something. Have a great night, everybody. Peace!